Here are 7 lessons on working in the creative industry that you weren't taught in design school. Let's jump into lesson number 1. So, talent isn't the main thing that gets you hired. Trust is. Now, what do we mean by this? Well, at university, you're taught the craft of design, how to use software, design thinking, design history. I myself had a whole design history module when I was at university. However, the industry hires people. What do we mean by this? Well, early on, you're being hired because someone trusts you won't mess up timelines. They trust you can replicate the work to a certain standard. You're going to be respectful in front of clients, and you're not going to mess up the vibe of the team, which is super, super important. Being reliable, easy to work with, and calm under feedback will take you much further in your career than being the best designer in the room. So many young creators struggle with absorbing feedback early on in their career. Having someone question your work and question the ideas behind it can be really tough and really draining. That's uncomfortable to hear, but that's the reality, I'm afraid. Lesson number 2, your first job is not about status. It's about proximity to real world work. This is something a lot of people get wrong. Working for a big brand does not equal big growth in your career. This is something I hear a lot from juniors, people I'm working with, I'm mentoring, or through my community. They compare themselves to other people they graduated with. Now, you're early on in your career, your friend might have gone on to work for a big brand, a big agency, and that might make you feel a little bit inferior, or a little bit like, oh, well, mine not good enough to work for these big brands. But the reality of an internship or a junior role at some of these companies is that you're at the bottom of the ladder, which means you're going to get lumbered with all the low growth tasks. The work no one wants to do is all going to be piled onto your plate. I once hired someone who told me a story about the first year after he graduated. He worked for a big agency based in London, was super excited. His university as well were really excited that someone's graduated and gone on to this agency. After the first 12 months working there, his sole job was image searching on Getty Images for campaigns. He didn't touch a single piece of design. Working in a small team often means that you see strategy, not just execution. You get to touch more projects across the company, and inadvertently, your portfolio is going to grow a lot faster. Titles and logos don't equal learning. Lesson number 3. Studio politics will affect your career as much as your creative skill. Uni doesn't teach you how to give feedback without sounding defensive, doesn't tell you how to read a room in a meeting or within your agency or studio environment, doesn't teach you how to understand who are those people of influence within a company. People knowing who you are and for the right reasons is a huge growth hack. It cannot be understated. So how do you do this? Speak to people outside of your team, outside of your bubble. Something I instill into a lot of my creative teams that I've taken over is every week meet another person within the company you've never spoken to. A lot of us have Slack, go onto Slack. You will see people in the office, in the kitchen, and just say to them, look, are you free on so-and-so day? It'd be great to catch a coffee for 15, 20 minutes, just for me to understand what you do here, and how our roles align and where are those crossover points. And you'll be surprised at how many people will take you up on this. Creative work doesn't exist in a vacuum. Knowing when to push an idea and when to let it go is a career skill. This isn't selling out, it's surviving long enough to do good work. So lesson number 4. Most client work is not sexy in the slightest. And that's just normal in our industry, I'm afraid. This can be a real shock to the system when you're starting out, especially if you're working in-house or at an agency where you have very corporate clients. At university, there's no boundaries. You're rewarded to proceed and pursue bold concepts. There's no such thing as budget restraints or creative restraints on a university project. However, in the real world, there are. And you'd be surprised at how small some clients' budgets actually can be. Clients in the real world actually reward the clarity of your ideas, the consistency of your work. They want to know that everything you're going to produce is of a certain consistency. You can just slot straight into their workflow. And surprisingly, something that people don't talk about is a lot of these clients, they don't want to scare their stakeholders and their shareholders. They just don't want to do that. They're very, very risk adverse. Early frustrations usually come from thinking, if I'm not pushing boundaries, I'm failing as a creative. But you're not failing at all. You're learning how to work within the constraints, and that's the job. Lesson number 5. Your degree matters for about 5 minutes in the real world. That's a hard truth, I'm afraid. No one asks your grade after your first interview. At least certainly, I've never been asked, and I don't know anyone else who's been asked. High grades are emphasised at university, as more people with high grades allows that university course to rise higher in the rankings, which in turn means they can eventually charge more for the degree, but also attract a lot more people onto the course. You've got to remember, university is a business at the end of the day. They need to make money, and high grades is a direct correlation to charging more and better revenues. The real world, they don't really care about your grades. They care about what you as a creative can provide them. Getting a 2-2, for example, doesn't mean you're less creative. It often means that you didn't play the academic game very well and you didn't optimize your work for marking criteria. And that's okay. What the industry really cares about is your portfolio. What work do you have in there? But most importantly, how you talk about your work, how you explain it, not just face to face, but written on your portfolio. People want to land on it and get an understanding of who you are as a designer and why you made certain decisions. And also, they care about how you take feedback. Again, I've now mentioned this a few times already, but being able to take feedback in a constructive way is super, super important early on in your career. Some of the most impactful creators I know really struggled at university. So if you're predicted a low grade, do not let that put you off. That doesn't put you at a disadvantage at all. Lesson number 6, you won't feel creative most days, and unfortunately, that can mess with your head quite a bit. No one tells you this, but early roles can feel like production. You're just churning out the work that other people have designed and created and made the decisions on. They've made quite a bit of admin work, and it feels like you're just repeating the same task week in, week out. This continues as you start moving up the ladder as well. When you start hitting senior level, you might be managing 1 or 2 people. There's a lot more admin there. There's a lot more traffic management of the work. There's a lot more curating of the work. A lot more meetings. Trust me, it can be death by meetings sometimes. So this is something you need to get comfortable with. That doesn't mean you're not creative. It just means you're building taste, speed, and judgment, which are really key things to make it as a successful creative. Those don't feel exciting, but they compound very, very fast. If you expect constant inspiration, you're going to burn out really quick and you're going to quit very, very early on. And finally, lesson 7. Your career won't be linear, and that's okay. At university, you're taught a clear path. You graduate, you land a job, you then get a promotion, and you see success. Unfortunately, that's just not the reality. The reality is a lot of sideways moves. Your career can hit a lot of pauses for personal reasons and career-based reasons. You can experience a whole ton of doubt, and you're most likely going to have to reinvent yourself several times throughout this time. I don't know a single creative who had a linear path to success, and that can be extremely sobering. I remember myself when I graduated, it was my big dream to work for a fashion magazine. Graduated, I landed a role at one, I was super excited. This was around a time where print publication was starting to die out and digital was taking a bigger presence. What happened? Within a year, I got made redundant from my role. The magazine went fully digital. They let go a lot of staff. And it felt like my dream was over. But I had to reinvent myself. I then started to learn more digital-based skill sets and got a job and was a bit print and a bit of digital. And that kind of took me forwards into my career to hitting creative director level, which is where I'm at now. Feeling behind is a shared experience in the creative career. People who last are the ones who keep going through that discomfort. And that's it. That's 7 lessons they didn't teach you at design school. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments which ones resonated with you the most.